It's been nearly 100 days since President Biden delivered his inaugural address, promising our nation bipartisanship and unity. But folks, the reality is, those words ring hollow. In 100 days, President Biden has completely abandoned bipartisanship and has taken a very sharp left turn down a path that solely prioritizes Democratic special interests over the American people. In his first day in office, the president signed a flurry of executive actions that have created a new migrant crisis at our southern border, targeted Iowa-grown biofuels by attempting to transition to electric vehicles, and killed thousands of American jobs by canceling the Keystone XL pipeline. Instead of working with Republicans to pass a COVID relief bill, President Biden ignored efforts by Senate Republicans to seek a bipartisan solution and fast-tracked trillions of dollars in non-COVID spending in a strictly partisan fashion. And now, President Biden is blowing up a traditionally bipartisan issue, infrastructure, and is looking to pass a partisan, over $2 trillion package that spends less on roads and bridges than it does on elements of the Green New Deal and other progressive priorities. The Biden administration has made many reckless foreign policy decisions, from immediately reviving negotiations with Iran, a state sponsor of terrorism who continues to inch closer to a nuclear weapon, to potentially destabilizing the Middle East with a non-conditions-based drawdown of troops in Afghanistan. On top of it all, President Biden has refused to fully condemn calls from members of his own party to fundamentally change our democratic process by abolishing the filibuster and packing the Supreme Court. Iowans are tired of the partisan bickering in Washington and the radical ideas of the liberal left. They want Congress to work together on real issues that will improve the lives of all Americans. That's why I was so proud of and thrilled to hear the inspiring message from my dear friend and fellow Senator Tim Scott. Senator Scott has lived the American dream and has continued to be a tireless advocate for underserved people and communities throughout the country. Senator Scott laid out a better vision for America, one of opportunity and freedom and of growth and prosperity. Just like Senator Scott, I'm an eternal optimist, and I believe in America. I sincerely hope that my Democratic colleagues and President Biden will change course and truly work with us in a bipartisan way to support the hardworking men and women across this great nation.
Tonight, President Joe Biden did exactly what the left wing wanted him to do. He doubled down on decades of failed policies that treat Americans like clients and prioritize welfare programs over the stability of the family. It's been about a decade since the Obama-Biden administration had to bury that absurd Life of Julia love letter to federal spending, and still, D.C. Democrats, they haven't learned their lesson. What you saw tonight was the entrenched Democratic establishment dust off those policies and perform a little sleight of hand with the branding. It's nothing new, nothing groundbreaking. Democrats want to spend trillions upon trillions of dollars to incentivize dependency on the federal government and ultimately supplant the nuclear family as the focal point of American society. I'll tell you what, congressional Democrats are going to have a very difficult time pulling anything from this plan that could get bipartisan support. Because of this, I fully expect we'll see renewed demands that Chuck Schumer eliminate the filibuster and throw the Senate rules out the window, because that's the only way this mess would ever get out of Congress.
Tonight, we heard from President Biden on his accomplishments in his first 100 days in office and on his vision for our country moving forward. It's been a telling 100 days and a telling evening, though not perhaps in exactly the way that President Biden has presented them to Utahns and to all Americans. While President Biden campaigned as a centrist and something of a moderate, he's governed as anything but that. Consider a few of his main accomplishments thus far. In less than 6 months in office, he's issued 40 executive orders, including halting new oil and gas leases on public lands. That's a crippling blow to the countless Utahns who, in one way or another, depend on those leases for their livelihoods. Canceling the Keystone Pipeline with 1,000 jobs lost and 10,000 more that won't be created. Rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement, re-implementing a catch-and-release program, halting immigration enforcement, and ending the Remain in Mexico program and our asylum agreements with the Northern Triangle countries of Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. Creating huge surges of migrants and the now massive crisis on the border. He's passed a COVID relief bill spending $1.9 trillion, with only 9% of that going towards public health, and the rest of it going towards a partisan progressive wish list. He's unveiled a $2.3 trillion infrastructure package of the same ilk, with only 7% expected to go towards actual infrastructure. He's unveiled his so-called American Families Plan, a massive $1.8 trillion spending proposal that will be financed primarily by tax hikes. In fact, in just the first few months of his presidency, he's on track to spend a whopping $6 trillion, a total larger than the amount we spent on World War II, even when adjusted for inflation. On top of all that, President Biden has signaled openness to nuking the filibuster and packing the Supreme Court, something he had long opposed. He's insultingly and falsely painted Georgia's election integrity efforts as Jim Crow 2.0. Rather than the unity that he promised, President Biden has instead delivered extreme partisanship. He's taken unprecedented action to fulfill a progressive far-left agenda and increase the size, scope, and costs of the federal government. Ultimately, this agenda will only serve to make Utah and our country less prosperous, less fair, and less free. We have to remember that ultimately, government power is force, and it expands only at the expense of our liberty. Hardworking Utahns and Americans everywhere deserve an agenda that offers real hope, unity, freedom, and opportunity. Thank you.
I think my colleague, Senator Tim Scott, did an outstanding job showing the American people an alternative, that we really do have many of the same goals, Republicans and Democrats. We have just a different way of getting there. I think Senator Scott understands the racial divide very well, and his approach to solving the problem, police reform that doesn't pit the cop against the community of color. I think Senator Scott's dead on when he says it's a false choice between backing the men and women in blue and communities of color. The people who need policing the most are disadvantaged communities with high crime rates. Senator Scott's view of how to create jobs, the limited role of government, the best thing you can do for anyone struggling is give them a quality education through school choice and the hope of a good paying job. I've never been more proud of Tim than I am tonight. He did an outstanding job representing the conservative point of view and did it in a way that was respectful and I think will be a game changer for the Republican Party.
President Biden spoke tonight for about an hour. Frankly, he could have used only 30 seconds. All he had to do was come out and say, "Good evening, I'm President Biden, thank you for listening, here's my message. I want you, the American people, to send all of your money and all of your freedom to Washington, because the federal government knows how to spend your money and exercise your freedom better than you do." President Biden tonight called for a massive intervention by the federal government into the lives of the American people. He wants to dominate through the federal government America socially, culturally, spiritually, and economically. And it is clear that the president believes that government made America great. He is so wrong. People made America great. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And I don't know how President Biden got to be the age that he is, with the experience that he has, and not understand that. I was very disappointed in his message, and I've been very disappointed in his record. He is a modest man with much to be modest about, based on his record during the first 100 days.
The past year has challenged Americans as our country continues to battle the coronavirus pandemic and recover from the economic crisis it caused. I believe our brightest days lie ahead, but only if we work together. President Biden tonight echoed themes of bipartisanship and unity from his inaugural address, but South Dakotans can clearly see the difference between talk and action. While the president is quick to talk about bipartisanship, he has yet to meaningfully work with Republicans and has given cover to the far left wing of his party as it works to undermine the Supreme Court, the Second Amendment, and even the very nature of the Senate designed by our founding fathers. One of his first acts as president was caving to the extremist left wing of his party at South Dakota's expense by canceling the Keystone XL pipeline and killing thousands of good-paying jobs. With a 50-50 split in the Senate and one of the slimmest majorities in the House of Representatives in modern history, the president must realize he does not have a mandate for his partisan, big-spending policies. If President Biden sincerely wants to work with congressional Republicans to fix our nation's infrastructure and create a greater quality of life for every American, he will not find a more willing partner than me. But if the president continues to pursue a costly and one-sided agenda, he can expect fierce opposition from Republicans in Congress. On the eve of his 100th day in office, it's time for President Biden to choose whether the rest of his presidency will be defined by the rank partisanship seen in his first 100 days, or if he will live by the words of his inaugural address. For the sake of South Dakota and the United States, I sincerely hope the president reverses course. The challenges we face as a nation are too great to go it alone.
I just attended Biden's joint address to Congress. This administration and this Democrat-run government is completely out of control. We need term limits, and we need a balanced budget amendment, and we need Republicans to take back this House. I ran for Congress because I believed liberals when they said they wanted to defund the police and take more control over our lives. I believed every word of it. And now that I'm in Congress, I can see it firsthand, and I see just how much our way of life is under assault by them. That speech was hard to watch, but I promise you this: I will always be your voice for freedom and prosperity, and I will work hard every day to make sure our voices are heard. God bless you.
Well, good evening, everybody. You're staying up late, I'm sure, watching the weather and tracking all that stuff as well. So hope everyone's staying safe tonight, enjoying the rain and the thunderstorms, and staying out of the hail tonight. I watched the speech tonight from President Biden and Senator Tim Scott's response, and I got a chance to watch that on TV since there was a limitation of only 200 people in the House chamber, a room that's literally built for 1,600. To only allow 200 people in there. I would assume all 200 of them have been vaccinated and wearing masks. It was just kind of odd to be able to watch from that, knowing how often now the CDC talks about for vaccinated people being able to be together and being able to set an example tonight. I thought would have been a good idea to be able to do that, but obviously that's not what the plan was. It was kind of the show of all that happened tonight. President Biden stepped up. It was not like his speech that he gave, this unity speech about 100 days ago when he first came for his inauguration. This was more of a demonstration of, if you want to know what the beginning of socialism looks like, this is what it looks like. It is raise taxes on this group of people, give the money to this group of people, and there will be a government program for every single thing in all of life. His focus tonight was every problem that we have, government is the solution, and we just need more government there to be able to do it. So we need more government in our schools. We need more government in our healthcare. We need more government in our workplace. We need more government on each item. And in fact, he even said there are things that only government can do, which is true. Building highways and all that such, that has been a government project. I understand the infrastructure side, but he seemed to be just a focus on if we just had more money and if we just had more government, then we could do a lot more things. It's interesting to be able to set that side by side. It just wasn't that many years ago. The conversation was, let's get back to allowing the private sector and families and to be able to lead the nation with what we're doing in communities. And this was very much of a, whether it's voting or whether it is policing or whether it is every issue, it needs to come to Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C., we know best, and we're going to send that back out to everybody. I just don't think the vast majority of Oklahomans agree with that. I think the vast majority of Oklahomans are like, okay, we get up every day, we go to work. It doesn't take government oversight to be able to do that. It's parents that actually engage in their kids and make a huge difference in their education and in their training and in their workplace. And as I talk to many Oklahomans, they're very, very frustrated with how government is getting in the way of what they're trying to do, not government's actually facilitating what they do. Now, in the middle of all that, President Biden at the very beginning actually started with basically taking credit for all the vaccinations that are happening around the country. And for the last 100 days, obviously, he's been the president and helped handling the logistics of that. But it's interesting, he completely left out that the vaccines were developed over the past year with great science, with Operation Warp Speed, with that program, with a partnership with the private sector and the government being able to work together. It wasn't a government solution. It was the private sector actually working to be able to do the science and the research. It was government facilitating how they get that distributed and how we deal with the cost on it. That partnership together is what actually got this vaccine ready and got it started on the distribution. All of the needles, all of the alcohol swabs, all of those things had already been ordered and purchased and put in place. All the vaccines had already been ordered and put in place. And now it's just the distribution to be able to get shots in arms. And that's really what accelerated the economy. President Biden talked about how the economy has taken off and we have 1 million jobs that are out there. It's great, but it's really probably just people returning back to work on it, which we all expected as shots were getting into arms. And that begins to take off. So I've been vaccinated. My family's been vaccinated. I encourage people to be vaccinated and go through that process. Again, it's optional for people. It shouldn't be mandated for individuals if they don't choose to do that. But that's made the greatest difference in our economy right now. And quite frankly, some of the proposals that were in that quote-unquote COVID bill that was 2 months ago have actually slowed our economy down with the rapid increase for unemployment assistance and all the different cash benefits that went out. I've talked to lots of people around the state that are really ticked off because the person that used to work next to them is at home getting unemployment now. They're still working, but the person next to them is at home just getting unemployment benefits, and they're pretty frustrated by it all. And so that he did not bring up the issue about unemployment issues at all. He just kind of conveniently left that part out. So that was a big deal as we go through all that. There's a lot of talk about just the size of government and the complexity of government and how much government could do on every single area. The interesting thing is he talked about climate change in government and what government could do. And he said, for climate change, I think jobs, jobs, jobs. And I thought, okay, in Oklahoma, I don't see a lot of people that think jobs, jobs, jobs for climate change. Obviously, we have jobs in solar power and in wind, and those are significant, but they're part of what we're doing in the energy sector. I know people that have lost their job because President Biden has come in place. There are people that are Oklahomans that lost their jobs based on pipeline jobs, other proposals. Obviously, there's a pause on all federal lands and leasing right now. Those are folks all over the country that have lost their jobs. And so those are a lot of really good paying jobs. And so when I hear those words, obviously we want to do energy as clean as we can possibly do it. But I don't think jobs, 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 except for I think of people that I know that have lost jobs in the process. And that's a big issue. He talked about honoring children, which is a good thing, by the way, and continuing to be able to strengthen children. But what's interesting for me to be able to track is what he left out here. President Biden has been the most pro-abortion president in the history of the United States. He's done more abortion promoting actions as president than any other president has done, certainly not in his first 100 days. But this president has been dramatic in how much he's been promoting abortion. We now do abortion funding around the world. We're also doing abortion funding for the first time ever as a country with tax dollars. That partisan COVID bill actually allows for abortion funding with American tax dollars. That has never occurred before. We're now doing the purchasing of baby body parts again. All those things that had been set aside to say we're not going to do that as a country. Those are all back, along with a lot of other things that are out there that are very, very pro-abortion and increasing the number of abortions in America. I found that interesting that he talked about children. I assume that means children after they're born, because before they're born, he's left that out. He did talk about Second Amendment issues, only in the ways that, as he would talk about it, in ways to be able to limit the number of guns and to be able to try to remove certain types of guns. He talked about ghost guns, which sound very scary. If you call something a ghost gun, except a ghost gun is also not legal for someone to have. If you're not allowed to own a firearm, it's illegal. You've committed a felony, whatever it may be, that you're not allowed to own a firearm. You're also not allowed to own a ghost gun. He made it kind of sound like this is a secret kind of gun over there that people that cannot legally own a firearm can't own. That's not true. It's still illegal for them to be able to own it as well, but he's been pretty aggressive about if it's an AR, if it's a high capacity magazine, if it's a quote unquote ghost gun. He just kept going on to say all these things we're going to try to find a way to be able to take away from folks and to not allow in America. And again, it's just a different type of gun. He didn't even try to connect the two to be able to say, if we do this, then all this gun violence goes away on it. Again, that's a big family issue that we need to resolve in the future. He did talk a little bit about immigration, and he said he wanted to be able to do this immigration bill that he had sent the first week to Congress. And he said, take my bill up and pass it. What's interesting is the House of Representatives has already discussed his immigration bill. His immigration bill is even too far left for the House of Representatives. Even Nancy Pelosi and all the progressives in the House will not take up his immigration bill because it's even left of them. So that bill, thankfully, is not coming up. We do want him to be able to deal with border security. He talked about legalizing every single person that's here, not legal in the country right now. He talked about giving citizenship to all these different millions of people. He went through all those proposals that he wanted to do, but he didn't talk at all about the wall that literally has gaps in it, that he has left gaps in it, that all the construction that's in the southern border that has completely stopped. The hundreds of thousands of people in the last 3 months that have illegally crossed into the border, and the thousands and thousands that he is allowed to be able to come into the country. He didn't talk about that at all. He just completely skipped that. And I thought that was sad that he actually skipped those things because that's something that I think Americans do want to hear. What are you going to do to fix that? That's a major problem that Americans see. There's a major crisis at the border with thousands and thousands of people coming. His answer seemed to be, I'm going to give to the vice president, and she's going to work with Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, and we're going to fix this eventually. Well, that's not going to solve it for years and years. I think people want to know, what are you going to do now to be able to stop the flow of people coming into the country illegally? And it was just basically long-term look. I'm going to deal with this at some point as we try to deal with Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador and some issues that are there, ignoring the fact, and it is a fact, I've been down to the border multiple times this year already, that over 100 countries represented have crossed our border illegally just this year. So it's not just people coming from the Northern Triangle. Literally, people are crossing our border illegally from everywhere, every corner of the globe. They know that we're open as a border right now, and they're just flowing through right in the middle of it. So that's a problem I think a lot of people want to get an answer to, didn't get an answer to tonight. I like his rhetoric to be able to say, let's find a way to be able to work together, but I like Tim Scott's statements a whole lot better. When Tim Scott kept saying, let's get common sense for common ground in the Republican response. If you missed the Republican response, I really encourage you to listen to what Tim Scott laid out tonight. He did a phenomenal job just casting a vision and saying, here's the problem. We really don't believe government solves everything. We really do believe there's a role for government, but government's not the one that solves everything. And then he kind of walked through both his own family story and multiple other family stories, paying special attention to single moms, that he grew up with a single mom. I also grew up with a single mom. So I get it, and he gets it. And there are real dynamics that I think that people lose track of in the challenges of those families. But he laid that out and said, here's what we can do to be able to help every single person be successful. Tim Scott highlighted some things like, we should make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. I 100% agree with that. He talked about the double speaker rhetoric that's happening around the Georgia election law. to say, actually read the Georgia election law and really don't just look at the highlights, read the actual bill and to be able to go through and do and see what it's trying to do. It has more days of early voting than New York has, or the president's home state of Delaware has. It keeps open for mail-in voting. It opens up and legalizes for the first time drop boxes and all these different things. But it's not about blocking that out. And Tim Scott made some really great statements about race. He made the statement, race is not a political weapon. We have differences. But his focus was, there was a time that people looked at the color of skin and said that person's inferior based on the color of their skin. And he said now it has shifted, that America is teaching people to say, look at the color of skin and saying, because of the color of their skin, they're an oppressor just because of the color of their skin. It's a great statement from Tim to be able to just bring up to people to say, hey, listen, we've got to find a way to be able to work together, and trying to find ways to be able to separate each other and trying to find political gain based on the issue of race is not the way to accomplish this. And he made the comment, he said, we need to make sure that this is not about Washington dreams or socialist schemes, but we're actually finding a way to be able to work together and to actually redeem what is broken in America. And we can do that. I happen to work with Tim Scott on this police reform bill that he brought last year. I can tell you, I know how hard he worked last year. I know how hard he's working this year on that bill. I've been very engaged with that conversation as well. And I know this is a big issue for him personally. But I also know what Democrats did last year to be able to block that bill and to say they wanted to keep the issue, not actually solve the problem. I saw it firsthand. So the hope is that we can actually deal with some of these issues in a way that we actually work together. Again, as he said, common sense towards common ground to be able to get these things done. Again, another joint session, another year to be able to walk through it. I know there are differences of opinion. I'm sure quite a few folks have already shared some of those tonight, getting a chance to be able to walk through it. Be interested in your comments and your thoughts. Feel free to be able to contact the office in the days ahead. You can go to langford.senate.gov. You can get all of our contact information for the Oklahoma offices and the Washington, D.C. offices. You can email us or call us. You can post something on all the social media sites at Senator Langford if you want to do that. But we need to continue to engage as a country in trying to solve hard issues. At the end of the day, one thing President Biden said that I do agree with, we've got to sit down and to be able to work out the hard solutions. Twice he said in the speech, Republicans have put forward a proposal. Let's actually talk about that. That's a good first step for the president, who in the past 100 days is dominantly just blocked us out. So it was a good first step for him to say, great, you're putting together these proposals. He's acknowledging the work that we've continued to do and have been doing on all these different areas. And he said, let's sit down and be able to work it out. Now, I hope that actually continues and we can actually come to resolution with common ground and common solutions because we all see the problems that we have, but we all need to work together to be able to actually solve those things together. So look forward to maintaining the dialogue between all of us as we get a chance to be able to work through these issues.